Hey everybody, welcome to the Successful Mind podcast. On today's episode, David and I are going to be talking about your operating system, a.k.a. your mindset, and the three things that direct that operating system. They are your core wound, your core negative belief, and your core fear. And we're going to be going in depth into what those are so you can identify if this is going on in your life. Give it a listen.
You're listening to the Successful Mind podcast.
Successful people learn how to make their minds work for them.
We are Life is Now, and this is the Successful Mind podcast. Hey, David, how's it going?
Great. How you doing?
I'm doing just fine, thanks. So got an interesting question today.
Okay.
Somebody asked us, what do we do? What do we do as life is now? What do we do? Which I thought was an interesting question because, working here, I always assume everybody knows.
Right.
Everybody knows how we help people, but I'm going to sum this up in a teeny tiny little nutshell. Is that cool with you?
Yeah, do it.
And then we'll explain it.
Do it, because I'm not sure what we do anymore.
Life is Now, we're basically business consultants, but our secret sauce is that we help you uncover your current operating system. And by operating system, we talk about mindset and how that's responsible for a business owner's current results. Because if you don't know what the operating system is, you don't know what needs to change to get different results. So we help people understand their operating system, and then we also help them strategically with how to move forward to get the results that they want. So it's two parts. It's one part mindset and one part strategy. And I think what people don't understand, and I got this question on a podcast recently too. The podcast host point blank asked me, what is mindset? Like, what is mindset? And that wasn't a question that they had pre-sent. So I just gave my definition, which is your mindset is your operating system. And your operating system is created by how you were raised and the people that raised you and your experiences, right? So if you grew up in the middle class and you didn't change anything, you have a middle class operating system. Yeah. If you grew up in an entrepreneurial family, chances are you have an entrepreneurial operating system. And each of those systems are filled with beliefs and values that contribute to that operating system, and also experiences that you've had over years that contribute to that operating system. But what we've gotten really good at is determining the three things that have the biggest impact on your operating system. And that is your core wound, your core fear, and your core negative belief. Yeah. And when I say those three things, people just look at me cross-eyed. And I know we get that question even from our current clients of, what are those three things? How do I get rid of those three things? How do I change those three things? So I think it's a good idea for us to spend some time in the actual foundation of your mindset or your operating system in terms of your core wound, your core fear, and your core negative belief, what they are, how they're different, and what someone needs to do about them.
Yeah, absolutely. It really is a great question. So let's look at it from the aspect that people are born to be a success. Life is created with the intention of being a success, not a failure. Even if you're having a rough time, even if you've had many failures in your life, even if you're looking at yourself as like, I'm a failure, I'm a loser, you're not. You were born to be a success. But when we don't understand that we have an operating system, and when that operating system has been skewed by other people's operating systems that don't know what they're doing, it doesn't remove the fact that everybody's operating system operates under the law of cause and effect. In other words, however you're operating, your internal vision of yourself, your external vision of your world, and your strategy to work with both operates based on the law of cause and effect. That's a cause, that will give you an effect. Your effect are your results, your circumstances, your environment, the people, the places, and the things that are in your results, circumstances, and environment, and how well you think you're doing, or perhaps not doing. So one of the key things is to understand that there's a very significant thing that happens with human beings that most people aren't aware of. And that is, it starts off like this. We are born without much ability to communicate and completely reliant on mom and dad, adults, right? Without those adults in our life, human beings die. That's it. So from a strictly biological perspective, there has to be a way for us to get our needs met as infants in order to be able to survive. We have to get our needs met. We have to be protected. We have to stay healthy and in a safe place in order for us to survive. Unconsciously, from our unconscious operating system as an infant, the idea is that mom and dad are the authority in your life. You're basically submitting to that authority and you're getting your needs met by them. Now, we're born, we don't have any language, right? We don't even understand language. There's no words in our mind to form, oh, this is the meaning of this experience that I'm having. It's just we're having it. And our internal instinct determines whether or not this is something that we need or something that we don't. And then we automatically react in a way that tries to get mom and dad's attention if we aren't getting our needs met. So they could say, is this child hungry, or are they uncomfortable or wet or sick or cold or hot or whatever the baby's experience is. And this continues on for a long time. We start to develop around the age of reason, is around 7 years old, which means we start to learn how to critically think. We start to become aware that we can give meanings to things based on the language that we're learning and our understanding of that language and how descriptive that language is based on how we're being taught about that. And then as we give those things meaning, those meanings are then stored inside of us. Before that age, most of it's stored just emotionally. It's a feeling, right? So when we have an experience, it can be an image, it could be a feeling, it could be a sound, but it doesn't necessarily have a whole lot of meaning to it, unless you gave early experience meaning later on in life. Mm-hmm. Okay, but you didn't in the very beginning. So we are the one animal that has the longest amount of time with parents. Traditionally, the idea is that through the period of what we call childhood, the authority is supposed to be slowly and objectively handed over to us until we're adults, where we can take care of ourselves, we're mature, we understand and have the basic skill sets for life. And also the idea is that we have a good operating system so that we can manage ourselves as we begin to go through life and continue to learn. But one thing that rarely happens is any kind of line of demarcation in the mind where you go, okay, I'm no longer a child anymore, right? I'm an adult and I am the authority in my life. In fact, it's so subtle that very often people don't make that decision. They don't make that choice, and they don't take the authority of their own life. And actually, they continue to live a life where other people are in authority. It could be mom and dad. It could be a boss. It could be a boyfriend, a girlfriend, whatever. And they're constantly deferring to what other people think. They're not actually making choices themselves. So with the operating system prior to that line of demarcation where we say, I'm the authority, and after is going to be very different if it's consciously made. And if it's not consciously made, you're going to have an adult with the operating system of an infant. And I don't say that as an insult, but as a way of processing our world. So an infant processes its world by how does it get its needs met, and then it responds to the consistency in which those needs are met by the parents. Meaning that if the parents are really consistent and they're loving and they give that to the child on a regular basis, you're going to have a healthy child, you're going to have a confident child, you're going to have a child that feels safe, You're going to have a child that understands and feels safe in getting its needs met whenever it expresses in which way it's going to do that. If for whatever reason the parents are inconsistent, and most parents are inconsistent to some degree. I mean, we're human beings, but you can go from having a parent that's just a little inconsistent all the way up to somebody that might be, say, mentally ill, where they're having really difficulty in their own life, and they're passing on that inconsistency to the child. The child begins to develop this series. It's an operating system, and it's a series of things that we call core wound, core fear, core negative belief. And what it is a way for them to see the world on the basis of life and getting their needs met. And the idea is that nothing goes below those ideas. Otherwise, the child is in jeopardy of actually dying. But when an adult does not understand what their core wound, what their core fear, and what their core negative belief is, they're living in an adult world, making decisions from this very, very vulnerable experience they had as a child, and it's perpetuating itself as an adult, and it literally is showing up in how they make decisions for their life. So when an adult looks at their life and they can point out, here's things I'm tolerating, or here's things that aren't going well, or here's things that I'm doing that I don't want to be doing, on and on and on. And it could go anywhere from relationships to their health, to how their attitude. It could be involved with their kids. It could be involved with their spouse, their employer, if they own a business, anywhere within a business. It's going to cause a person to make decisions from the idea of protecting those three areas of their life on the bottom end, even though they'll have aspiration to move forward on the top end. Like everybody wants to be happy to some degree. So
when you say protecting, you mean protecting them from experiencing those three things.
Yes.
So protecting them from experiencing their core wound, their core fear, and their core negative belief.
Right. Because and here's the reason why. I'm trying to do this without getting too long-winded on it. An infant is trying to protect itself from death. Okay. Now, if you say that to an adult, they're like, but I'm not a kid anymore. Yeah, that's true, obviously, but your subconscious mind doesn't know that, right? There was a time in your life when your outside needs were so necessary that if you didn't get them filled, you would die. So we develop an internal mechanism in order to be able to do that. If that doesn't change into an adult's objective of I can meet my own needs, right? I can master that process, that operating system, as you call it, in my own life. They're going to operate from the former, and it's going to carry on all the way through their adult life. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah. Should we give some examples of how this shows up in real life? So I'm going to give this. This is a really good one. A business owner is tolerating an underperforming employee and has been tolerating an underperforming employee for a really long time. So the toleration is they're tolerating an underperforming employee. Yeah. Their desire is to have a high performing, autonomous team. The clues to what the core wound, the core fear, and the core negative belief are lie within the excuses. So if we ask that business owner, what are all the excuses you have for continuing to tolerate this underperformance? Their excuses come out like this. I didn't train them well enough. I'm not a good enough leader. It'll make my team angry if I fire someone. I don't like conflict. She's nice. She's been with me for a long time, so I feel bad.
Yeah.
I should have said something earlier, so I don't feel justified in saying something now. I don't know how to have the conversation. An underperforming employee is better than no employee. I can't afford a better employee. I won't be able to find a better employee. I don't know that I'm good enough to have the employee that I actually want, right?
Right.
That's like we hear this all the time. Like I'm constantly writing down these excuses from our clients.
Yeah. And now I just want to point something out. When we sit down with a client and do that exercise and you're writing them down, wherever they stop, you say, keep going.
Yeah.
Keep going.
They get mad at me.
They do.
They like angry. I'm like, no, it's okay. Just keep going. There's more, I promise. Right. And then they sit and think for a while, and then it turns out there's like 15 more excuses under that are actually the real excuses, right?
Yeah.
But those excuses point to the lies that they believe about themselves. And those lies are their core wound, their core fear, and their core negative belief.
Yes.
Right? So in this example, the lies could be, well, if you look at the excuses, they all point to, I'm not good enough.
Right.
Which is a key core wound. They point to people will leave, which a key core fear is abandonment.
Yep.
And they could point to, I'm a bad person, which is a pretty key core negative belief, right? So they have...
Because if I was a good person, people wouldn't leave.
Right. If I was a good person, I would deserve to be supported well. Like the excuses are just such a great indicator of what the core wound, the core negative belief, and the core fear are. And it's not the same for everybody. Everybody's got different, core wounds are generally in the same vein, but a lot of people have different core fears and core negative beliefs based on their own personal experience and their own childhood. But it's interesting what happens when people become aware of the lies that they believe about themselves and how it's affecting the results in their business. They would rather protect themselves from experiencing the lie than actually have the business that they want. It's the thing standing in the way of having the business that they want. And then we usually ask, okay, if that's the lie, if the lie is you're not good enough, you'll be abandoned, and you're a bad person, what's the truth? And even then, people have a hard time seeing what the truth is. And the truth is simply the opposite of the lie.
The opposite.
Which is, opposite. I am good enough. I won't be abandoned. And I'm a good person.
Right.
Right? And then once they become aware of that, you go into, okay, so what are new behaviors that you're willing to commit to that are going to take you to your desire? And that's what pushes against that feeling of, I'm going to experience my core wound.
Yep.
My core fear and my core negative belief. But in terms of the three of them, those three things, we kind of lump them into one phrase. How is the core wound different from the core fear? How is the core fear different from the core negative belief?
Well, okay, so let's start with the core negative belief and work our way into the wound. Because most people do not experience their core wound out and out in like they wouldn't recognize it if you told them.
Yeah.
What they do experience on a regular basis is the things that piss them off in life, specifically things that other people do to them or are perceived being done to them, right? So the idea would, so if you think about, and when we say this, I want to just be clear so it's not confusing. We're not talking about observational stuff. Like you see somebody do something and it pisses you off, like somebody litters or something and you get angry about that, whatever. This has to do with things that are actually directed toward you.
Yeah, like someone lies to me, or someone belittles me, or someone, someone reacts aggressively toward me. Someone cuts me off in traffic, we've heard. Someone calls me names. Someone calls me crazy. Someone doesn't believe me. Someone accuses me of something, like those types of things that piss people off.
Exactly. So you have to ask yourself, first question is, why do you get pissed off when somebody does that, right? And the answer is not, well, wouldn't everybody get pissed off if somebody does that? Because we hear that all the time. And the answer is no.
No.
The reason you get pissed off is because it's triggering something in you that's making you angry. And anger is a defense mechanism. So you're defending something inside of yourself when you're having this experience. What are you defending? You're defending this core wound that's inside of you, because the thing that pisses you off is actually reflective of the idea that you don't think that you're worth anything, or maybe that you're not lovable, right? Mm-hmm. It is some kind of a rejection that's going on, and you're defending it because you don't want to have to experience it. So it keeps you at the surface level of what makes you angry, and you never go down in and figure out what is it that's actually causing this problem, right? So this core wound is, all it basically is this, to make it very simple. It is the determining factor of the inconsistency that you experience with your parents and how it was internalized. So it's usually internalized as not being worthy or not being lovable or both. And it comes, basically, it's a reaction to rejection or perceived rejection, right? It doesn't even need to be real.
Right.
And here's the real truth. This generally takes place in the first year of life. and it's emotional, and it's not framed. By language or meaning until later on. So as we begin to move through our childhood and we start to understand language and we start to understand and give shapes to our experiences and hear other people give meaning to their experiences, like you watch mom and dad go through something and they say that this is what it means to them, we then interpret those as what it means to us. So if we have those feelings of being abandoned, if we have those feelings of being rejected, if we have those feelings of not loved, we interpret that as being the truth for ourselves. Now, this creates an internal focus as much as an external focus. We then constantly are on the lookout for what? These things that say that we're not good enough or lovable. Why? Because in our mind, we're thinking, how am I going to get my needs met? So we got to find another way to get our needs met if that is what the truth is, because you're still dealing with a child. Your subconscious mind does not know, absolutely does not know that at some point you're an authority to be able to get those needs met. So it says the alternative to that is death. But obviously that changes as soon as we start to get to the age where we can actually communicate what our needs are. But if those have been stifled, we may be very uncomfortable communicating what it is that we need. And what we do is we find different strategies to get our needs met. Now, those strategies are amazing in the way that they usually work in your childhood. They actually get your needs met as a child, right? But that's because you're dealing with people, for the most part, that are in authority over you your whole childhood. But once you become an adult, and you're now the authority, but if you're ignorant to that fact, you don't realize you're authority, you don't get these needs met anymore. What ends up happening is this starts causing problems in your life. It's detrimental to you getting your needs met, and you don't understand why you're having these experiences. Does that make sense, Steph?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. And in the instance of, the tolerating the underperforming employee, this person got their needs met because they were nice.
Yes.
Right? You be nice and you'll get your needs met. Be nice. Don't rock the boat. Don't create issues and you'll get your needs met. So her actually having a conversation with her underperforming employee, she couldn't even think of how to have that conversation because it brought up the threat of experiencing her core wound. And really it's a conversation of concern.
Right. Because my number one need is don't leave me. I don't want to be abandoned, because if I'm abandoned, I'll die. But you're thinking this and you're 35.
Yeah. And it's got nothing to do with the situation. Right. Your underperforming employee has nothing to do with you. It has to do with them. Or the thing that pisses you off, if someone lies to you, it's got nothing to do with you. It's got everything to do with them. Right. But as a child, that's not how you internalize things.
Nope.
I mean, how many times do we hear the children blame themselves for their parents' divorce, even though their divorce had nothing to do with the child, because you internalize everything as a child as being about you.
Yes. Yeah.
And then that's carried on into adulthood until it's not. And that's really what we do, is we help people stop doing that so they can make empowered decisions from a place of consciousness rather than that compulsive behavior from a core pattern from childhood.
And, a lot of times people will say, is this something that, like, how long do I have to work on this? Is this something that's really deep? It's going to take me years to dig this out and figure out what caused it. First of all, you'll probably never figure out what caused it, because it's usually not one thing. It's a set of circumstances in which you were raised in that gave you a set of determining ideas and meanings that you then internalized as this is what this is. The whole idea was just to keep you alive and keep you safe and have you grow into an adult. So it's not that it's so deep. It's that it's protected so well that if you don't understand what's actually taking place, you interpret it completely different. Like you're saying, right? The fact is, if I have this underperforming employee, the issue is with them. So I'm thinking to myself, I don't want this person to leave. I don't want this person to be mad at me. And you internalize it as having something to do with you because you're protecting something inside of you when actually the issue is them, is what you're saying.
Yeah. 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 It's as simple as coming to them and saying, hey, I'm noticing that you're you're having a difficult time hitting this, this, and this. Is everything okay? What can I do to support you in making sure that this is hit? And if you can't hit it, I need you to be part of the solution for us to figure out a way so that it is hit so that the company can grow, right? It's not a personal matter, or it shouldn't be emotionally charged
or judgmental
in the slightest. It should, like a past podcast, curiosity over judgment, right? Like you come at it with curiosity, like, hey, what's going on here? Okay, so I'm going to take you back because I don't know that this actually got answered, and I'm just making sure that I caught it.
Okay.
So you've got the core wound, the core negative belief, and the core fear. What's the difference between the three of them?
Okay, so the core wound is your internal view of yourself, which I said was either unworthy or unlovable, right? So it's your self-image of yourself, right? I'm not worthy of good things in my life, or I'm not worthy of love, or I'm not worthy of attention, or I'm not worthy of people staying in my life, or and as an adult, I'm not worthy of somebody doing a good job.
Or I'm not worthy of the prices that I want to charge.
Right. The core fear is ultimately what you're afraid of if this core wound is real, which is abandonment for almost everybody. Now, that word can differ with some. We've had people where their core fear is that they were a disgusting, bad human being type of a situation. But really what it is, it's abandonment because death is a real thing for a child. So from a progressive perspective, a human being is always moving toward more life. They're moving away from death and toward life. But death is a real thing that they have no control over at that age. So if it becomes a vulnerability and it's an exploited vulnerability, then it becomes a fear.
Yeah, it's not safe to be alone as a child.
It's not safe to be alone, right?
Gotcha. And then core negative belief.
Core negative belief is like a surface filter that we go through the world. So what we want to do is we want to be careful of anything that threatens the idea of us dying, right? Of the abandonment. So these are the things that piss us off. So we will get defensive at anything that threatens our core wound with the ultimate idea that we're protecting ourselves so that we could stay alive.
So what are some examples of some core negative beliefs? I know I said before I'm a bad person, like a core negative belief, I'm a bad person.
Yeah.
I'm useless was one I think we've come across.
I'm a liar. I'm a bad person. I'm useless.
I'm a fraud.
I don't matter.
Those are big ones.
Yeah, those are the big ones. Can you think of anything?
I'm trying to think of any other ones that we've come across so many. We just rattled off 6, I think.
So the core negative belief is what we run into in dealing with people on a regular basis and how we perceive that they're interacting with us, right? So like you said, if somebody lies to us, or if somebody's too direct with us, or if somebody does something that we're interpreting as ourself, right?
Yes.
Right. So it causes us to feel bad. We get angry and we push back in that situation. And the idea is that if we can come at it from an understanding that it has nothing to do with us, it allows us to approach the situation completely differently.
Yes.
Completely different. And when it gets to new behaviors, we can totally change our life because it allows us to remove what we're tolerating in our life. And we get rid of the excuses because excuses are rationalizations of those beliefs.
Yeah. They're just rationalizations of lies in most instances. Yeah. Awesome. I think that was a good explanation of the 3. And it all starts with tolerations.
It does.
If you're tolerating anything in your life, you know that there's a core wound, a core fear, and a core negative belief that you're protecting.
It's your operating system. So change your operating system. Hey everybody, David Nagel. Thanks for listening to today's episode of the Successful Mind Podcast. Now you know what a core wound is, a core fear, and a core negative belief. Here's something. If you notice this in somebody else, maybe recommend that they listen to this podcast. It's something that with a little nudge and somebody recognizes this, they literally can change their entire life because, as Steph so graciously pointed out, it is an operating system and you can change it, which means you can change your life.
Thanks for listening to the Successful Mind Podcast. If you like what you've heard and you want to know more, go to lifeisnowinc.com.